everyone. I'm Pat Ratulangi, Nielsen's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Communications Leader, as well as our Asian American spokesperson. So excited to be here today, and welcome to Nielsen Noodles. Our very special guest and I will noodle over these insights. See what I did there? Talk about what they mean for our communities and what we can take forward in terms of actions of how we can amplify and further improve representation of our diverse communities. And of course, how can you not have noodles when it's called Nielsen Noodles? So we'll all be sharing all these insights over our favorite bowl of instant noodles. I'm so excited to be sharing a meal with our first guests. Hello, Urvashi and Kirtana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Urvashi. I'm a writer-director based in Brooklyn, and I recently completed a short film, Unmothered, which is available on HBO Max. You can watch it now.
Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Kirtana Sastry. I am an editor at Brown Girl Magazine. Been working with them for over 10 years. Crazy. And I'm also a producer and casting director and just wrapped up principal photography on my first feature, Land of Gold, which will be on HBO Max soon, sometime soon. TBD, I'll let you know.
So I think today we all have Maggi Noodles, and I'd love for both of you to share a little more about what your favorite memories are around these noodles.
Yeah, for sure. Urvashi, you want to go first?
Sure. I would say when I think of Maggi Noodles, I think of waking up in the middle of the night after my parents have gone to bed, sneaking down to the kitchen and making myself a delicious extra masala packets bowl of Maggi Noodles because they were just so good that my parents had to put a limit on how much we were allowed to eat.
I love that. We would have a very set schedule in my household of what our breakfasts would be every day. Typically Mondays and Wednesdays were like biscuits or something, easy, get us out of the house as quickly as possible kind of situation. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we would have waffles, which were always my favorite day. Fridays would be a bit of a grab bag. And then Saturdays and Sundays, my parents always made a point that it would be Indian breakfast. Typically on a Friday, or on a Saturday or a Sunday, I would have a bowl of noodles that looked just like this, with as many mixed vegetables as my mom could pack into it so that she, felt like we were having something healthy and had more than just one food group.
That's awesome. But for me, Maggi Noodles was the first after school snack that I learned to cook for myself that involved actual fire on a stove. So this always brings back good memories, like I've accomplished something in my life. Anyway, let's just get started here with our discussion today. I think we wanted to really double down on what it's like for South Asian content creators such as yourselves, the current state of representation for South Asians in TV and movies, right, in America today. And so I think let's start a little bit with what Nielsen has discovered, right? Through our Gracenote Inclusion Analytics data, we've seen that the share of screen for South Asians as a whole is pretty good. But one interesting insight we found was that the group that's really responsible for leading that is South Asian males. It's at or above parity. And when we say parity, we compare to the representation of that group in the population as a whole, right? And that stands for South Asian males at 2.3%. But when we dug deeper into South Asian females, that share of screen stood at just 0.3%, which is like, all right, 0.3 and 2.3, what's going on there, right? And I mean, just initial reaction when I first saw those stats, I was like, okay, I can think of Hassan Minhaj, Aziz Ansari, Kal Penn and Harold and Kumar, and some of those stories and shows have been dating many years back, right? And it's only recently that we hear of the bigger names who are female content creators, like Mindy Kaling in the Mindy Project, right? And then there's been some recent progress, like with Lily Singh, who started out as a YouTuber and became the first Indian woman with a late night talk show, and then you hear of younger actresses like Maitri Ramakrishnan with Never Have I Ever, and Avantika Vandanapru in Spin, right? And those are, some of the names who are starting to close and narrow that gap for South Asian females. So I guess, speaking of that, how do you feel Asian American, and or South Asian representation in media content has evolved?
Yeah, I think the past 10 years have been historic. I mean, we've gone from the 1970s Peter Sellers brown face to South Asians like Nisha Ganatra and Mira Nair directing nuanced, subtle, beautiful films about what it's like to be a South Asian American. But I think, now I think it's important not to conflate individual success with systemic change. I think there's so many people we have the Mira Nairs, we have the Kumail Nanjianis who are succeeding, and it's important to remember that they're succeeding against all odds, not because the system is built for them to succeed. So as a South Asian American creator, we're still facing extremely demeaning questions when we go into meetings with execs and or even are trying to explain why it would be why people would be interested in watching something with the South Asian lead. That's still something we have to sort of explain, that somehow people would still watch a movie even though the lead character is South Asian. So I think we've come a long way and we should be proud of that, but I think we have an even longer way to go.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. I think the biggest thing is, and the thing that I think a lot of us tend to say, especially lately, is that in order for change to happen, there needs to be top-down representation. It can't just be a huge factor and a huge bonus and a huge wonderful thing that's happening right now is that we have more content creators. So obviously when we make our own stories, it's always going to be better than someone making a story for us and just happening to put us, into those stories, like plugging us in as if it's little pieces of a puzzle, rather than us having the autonomy and the freedom to actually create our own stories, right? That's wonderful. It's wonderful that we have content creators, but at the same time, as Urvashi has said, we've had those content creators for a while. Mira and I made Monsoon Wedding in 2001, I think, 2001, something like that. Nisha Ganatra made one of the best films with that featured South Asian women, Chutney Popcorn, in 1999. Is when that movie came out. Don't quote me on that. Actually, maybe quote me on that. I think it's right. Yeah. But that's so long ago, So I think the content creator has always been there. The filmmakers have been there. What needs to happen is there needs to be top-down representation. That means everyone from the executive head of studio level all the way down to the PAs on set. No job is not important. Every job should be filled with people that look like us, with people who share our values, with that representation for there to be actual change moving forward.
So that's a good segue right there, Urvashi. I think let me turn it over to you to tell us a little bit more about that journey to getting your show on HBO Max.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of going off of what Kirtana was saying in terms of having South Asian people all the way from the very top execs to the PAs, I think one of the comments I get a lot on Unmothered is the sound design. People are like, how that's, especially from South Asians, and that's, those are the people who know if it's authentic or not. So they are the ones who are saying, how did you get exactly what that city sound, what Rajasthan sounds like, from the rickshaws to like the exact type of birds cawing in the background? And it's because my sound designer is a South Asian American woman. And it's those kinds of, it's so important to have South Asian Americans behind the camera, almost even more important than having them in front of the camera. I mean, I would say it's unethical to have South Asians in front of the camera when there aren't any behind the camera, because it's just doing more harm than good.
What I always say is, you can make a Manchester by the Sea, or you can make a marriage story and put that exact story, but have South Asian people in them, have Asian people in them, have BIPOC people in them. And you're telling a story that is so interesting already, but you're adding a cultural lens without really even having to bring it up, because you've cast those people who are like that, or you have the people that are writing it behind the camera who just have that as part of who they are. And automatically you're telling a story that becomes universally relatable because specificity is relatable.
Yeah, I think just going off of that, I think that's exactly how, as South Asians, we think of our own identity. You know, I am South Asian and I love that, but it's only one part of my multifaceted identity. And when I decide to make films, I often like to draw from my personal life. And if I'm going through a breakup, I'm going to make a film about a breakup. But yes, it's a South Asian person going through a breakup, but it's just one part of, you know, a rich and lush, vibrant life.
I think that's one of the best parts about, creating content, right? It's being able to connect. It's being able to share those moments that bind us through those stories rather than putting it in your face like you were talking about. And it doesn't have to be about a particular culture, but, we're human beings at the end of the day, and that's what brings us all together. So I think that's all we have time for today. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me on Nielsen Noodles. It was great noodling over some of these questions about the South Asian content and diaspora and the stories around all of us. Please leave your comments, suggestions, and questions below and follow us at our social channels.